what's up guys? This is Nick at Stridewise.com. Today I'm taking a look at the very chunky and extremely tough Java waxed flesh boot from Truman Boot Company. So Truman Boot Company is an American operation. They are currently based in Boulder, Colorado, but they were founded in Pennsylvania by Vince Romano, who named the company after his border collie. Now, there are a lot of articles out there that say that Vince Romano used to work for Viberg, which is not true. That's a misconception. But the company is nonetheless frequently compared to Viberg because they make these boots with insanely solid construction, but at quite a bit of a cheaper price. This is actually one of my favorite boots. If you check out my video, my 5 favorite boots for fall, this is my favorite tough boot, the toughest boot that I own. It is an extremely durable, chunky tank of a boot. So let's dive in and take a closer look. So first glance, what have we got? A big, chunky tank of a boot. Truman calls this their front range boot, which is just their word for their traditional boot because their workers live and work on Colorado's front range. The leather is a very nice, thick, rough-out leather with a very waxy finish. The color is Java, which is a very, very, very dark brown. In most lights, it looks black. When you go outside or you're in brighter light, you can tell that it is a darker brown. The construction here is called structured. The toe cap here is structured. That's why it has a bit more volume and shape than some other boots, but it's not super, super hard. But nonetheless, this is a tough boot. It's a boot that wants to be worn outside. It's a boot that you want to kick around a lot. In addition to the thick leather, that wasn't that hard to break in actually, you've got this very chunky Commando sole here, which is really good for grip, really good for going outdoors in. You've also got a double stitched down welt around here, which is another reason the brand is often compared to Viberg because they put a lot of double stitch downs on their shoes as well. Those give an appearance of extra durability. I don't know if they actually are more durable than a Goodyear welt, but the construction is a little bit different. I'm going to talk about that in the sole section a little bit down the road. But nonetheless, you got this nice thick leather, you got this really chunky sole here. It's a pretty heavy boot. You got the double stitch down. And the back here, the counter, is unusually thick and chunky. In my opinion, this is where the fit sort of fails. I think it's not actually as thick as it looks around the toe cap and everything, but at the heel, it is very thick and very chunky. I'm going to talk about that a bit more in the fit and comfort section. Nonetheless, really chunky boot, and honestly, the second I got it out of the box, I just wanted to take it outside and just kick the crap out of it, but in a good way. All right, so this leather, this is the Java waxed flesh leather. Now this comes from Horween, which is a beloved leather tannery in Chicago. They make the leather for a really wide variety of companies, but this is actually an exclusive color that they made for Truman, which is kind of cool. As I mentioned, it's a super dark brown. In the sunlight, it looks brown. At nighttime, it looks black. That can sometimes make it a little bit hard to figure out the right outfit to wear with them, but I think they're pretty handsome boots in my opinion. Now, this leather is a vegetable tanned rough-out leather, meaning it is rougher to the touch than regular corrected grain leather like Horween's Chrome XL. And it feels rough because it's inside-out leather. You know, rough-out is the underside of a hide's grain. If you think of an animal hide as a loaf of bread, most shoes are made with the crust on the outside. This is made with the bread on the outside. Note that this is not the same thing as suede. That's made by splitting the leather, so it's not as thick as rough-out. So why use rough-out leather? Well, it wears very well and it doesn't require very much care, which is one reason why you often saw it on soldiers, like during the World Wars. In other words, it's usually used on boots that need to hold up to beatings and rough weather, and it might be useful for guys who just don't really like thinking that much about leather care. And they are extra resistant to the elements, these boots, and that is enhanced by a very waxy finish that coats the leather. That's applied during the finishing of the tanning process. And when it comes to taking care of these boots, you've really got to be mindful of that wax. So as I mentioned, rough out is often a favorite leather of guys who don't like to spend that much time taking care of their leather. And it's got this nice waxy finish as well, which again makes it pretty resistant to the elements and means you don't have to take care of it quite as much again. But when I spoke to Truman and I asked them if there are any pointers we should have to make sure these boots last as long as possible, they did nonetheless have some leather care options. First of all, they said you should not use any petroleum products on these boots. Secondly, what you want to use to condition this leather, they specifically recommended 2 products. You can use Bickmore's Bic 4 Leather Conditioner or Smith's Leather Balm. You can pick between those 2, but those are the specific products they like. So that makes it pretty easy. Just get one of those and you'll be fine. Now, does the waxy finish eventually leave the boot? Yes, it does. And Truman told me that they don't actually replace that wax for you. You can't send in the boots and have them like reapply the wax. And a lot of people I spoke to say that's just going to be kind of it. Once the wax leaves, that's sort of it. Other people say if you take them to the right cobbler, you can get some wax reapplied onto it and you'll be good to go. In any case, to minimize the odds of that happening, what you want to do is just take good care of the boots and try and be nice to them. Now, the waxy finish could leave after like one really tough winter, or it could take many, many years. In any case, just condition them as often as they need to. Just treat them like skin, condition them when they need to, and make sure they don't get too dirty. Give them a good cleaning now and then, and that will help to put off this need of replacing the wax if that ever arises. All right, let's talk about the sole. This is a Commando sole, which is widely considered the classic sole for working or hiking. As you can see, stuff gets easily stuck between the grips, and it is not remotely formal or dressy, but the upside is it's very grippy. By the way, there's a not so fun fact about this sole. Italian inventor Vitale Bramante invented this sole after 6 of his friends died in a climbing accident in the 1930s. So he made this sole because he thought they wouldn't have died if they had grippier shoes. It's kind of a sad story, but that's the origin of the Commando sole. It's made by Viberg, who are well known for the quality of their rubber. After the Commando sole, you've got a leather midsole and a leather insole, which is a type of leather layering that is very popular in old-fashioned work boots and which is often favored by people who have to work all day on their feet. There's also a steel shank in there for stability and arch support, and there's this stitch-down welt, which results in stitching going right through the upper and the outsole. Viberg has something similar on their service boot. Compared to Goodyear welted stitching, this is still pretty water-resistant, but it's a little bit harder to resole. But then again, this outsole is tough as nails, so you probably won't need to think about resoling for quite a while. So when it comes to picking out a size, they can always add new sizes, but right now they're between 5.5 and 14. And the widths they have, you get B, D, or double E. And the B and the double E take a little bit longer to order in, but I'm a D, so it was fine. These also run pretty true to size. I'm an 11.5 in this shoe. Normally I need to size down a half size, like with Red Wing and Wolverine and Thursday and Viberg and almost all of my other boots, to be honest. I'm a size 11. These are pretty true to size, so 11.5. Now there are, as I mentioned, 2 layers of leather in the sole, which is pretty typical of boots in which you're expected to stand around and walk in all day. It's a very sort of old school method of soling your shoes. And I gotta say though, I've been wearing these for a good few weeks now, very regularly, and they haven't really conformed to the shape of my foot in the way that I would expect a boot like this to do. Other boots that I've worn after like a week of wearing them, they're like pretty comfortable with my own shoe size. Not this one in particular. And the arch support isn't amazing, despite the shank in there. I wouldn't say they're uncomfortable shoes at all, but yeah, again, for shoes of this quality and this price, I kind of would expect it to become more me by now. But I'm not really complaining about the arch support or even the toe box. Like, they look pretty wide when you look at this shoe, but I didn't really have many complaints with this area. My biggest complaint was with the heel. Because if you look at this boot, the heel, the counter here is very, very wide and very chunky and very thick, and it's just not really a natural shape for a foot. So while I didn't slide around the toe box much at all, although I was expecting to do that, I slide around a lot in this heel. It's just too wide. It's not really the way a foot is shaped. And I gotta say that was my biggest complaint with this shoe. Now, as far as the price goes, the price can change at any time for any reason. Right now, the cost of these boots is about $540 for a pair of them. That's what I spent on Truman's website, and I haven't seen them for sale anywhere else. Now, Truman is, again, often compared to Viberg. Compared to Viberg, that's pretty inexpensive in that Viberg boots are normally like almost $150 more than that. Relative to all the other boots on the market, yeah, they're relatively pricey boots. They're over $500. Now, while we're talking about buying these boots, I should point out that there's a very good chance that you'll need to wait for them to make your boots before they actually get shipped out to you. Some people see that as a pro. It's kind of nice to have someone, you put in an order and they get to work, like making it to your specs. But yeah, I waited 5 weeks between making the order and the boots actually arriving in my hands. That's not always the case. They often have like sizes like just kind of lying around, boots they've already made. Nonetheless, you shouldn't be disappointed if you get a good 5-week wait. All right, so why should you get a pair of Truman Java Wax Flesh boots? They are very, very tough boots. I mean, they're going to age really, really well too. I had a few boot expert friends take a look at these boots, and they definitely all agreed that the leather will age very well. This leather also doesn't require that much care, which is a pro of roughout leather. It doesn't need like a ton of moisturizing. It doesn't scratch super easily or things like that, which is always a bonus. Leather's very thick. This is also an exclusive color from Halloween, so you feel a little bit special getting this Truman-only leather, unlike Chrome XL, which every single person has on their boots these days. In addition to that, The sole, very, very grippy. I like this Commando sole, not super versatile aesthetics-wise, but nonetheless, compared to a lot of other boots out there with like their flat cork soles or their leather soles, or even maybe a Viberg or a day-night sole, this just has like, yeah, super, super good chunky grip, and the construction all around is very, very solid. These boots are not particularly light, they're not particularly subtle, but they do scream like durability, and they are boots you want to take outside and beat around. So for boots that can definitely handle the outdoors while also being, you know, relatively nice with a pair of khakis, I think this is a pretty good bet. Now, there are a few things you might not be quite so crazy about with this shoe. They're pretty expensive. They're well over $500. That's going to be a big hurdle for a lot of guys. There's a good chance you'll have to wait a good 4 or 5 weeks for them to arrive at your door. That can be a bummer sometimes for some people. They're not very versatile either. I mean, they've got this really big chunky Commando sole here. They're boots you want to take outside. You can wear them with a t-shirt, which is actually very nice because there aren't a lot of boots that you can wear with a t-shirt because boots often come off as too dressy for that. So they're nice casual boots, but you definitely can't wear them with slacks, even around the office. You know, it's a bit iffy. These are shoes you just want to take outside and beat up, but for that, they're pretty good. Another thing that I didn't love so much about this shoe, they're not very well lasted. When shoes are getting made, the way that you put the leather around the last is really important to the finished product. You can tell they just haven't been lasted particularly well, and they're not very symmetrical. You know, when you put them side by side, the double stitch down on the left shoe, the threads are much, much closer together than the right shoe. I don't think that really has much of a practical implication as far as like durability and function goes. But you know, when you're paying this much for boots, you don't have a lot of patience for little QC issues like that. And finally, my biggest complaint with these shoes, the heel is just too wide. It's just too wide. When I wear these shoes, my heel slips around them. Even though I got a D width, you might want to get a B width, maybe. Like if I had the option, I would have liked to try those out. But since these have to be made for you, yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in the sizing, to be honest. All right, those are my thoughts on the Truman Boot Company's Java Waxed Flesh boot. Those were just my experiences with the boot. You might have had a different experience. If you've tried these boots, let me know in the comments what your experience was like, especially with the fit. I'm really curious to hear what your experience was like. And make sure you subscribe, because I got a ton more boot reviews coming up after this.